I was sitting in the waiting room at the clinic when a message came through that froze my blood. "Mom, I'm about to board a cruise ship for a trip around the Caribbean. I sold the beach house and Dad's Rolex. We needed the money. Goodbye." But before I go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching this story from. I'd love to see how far my story has traveled. My name is Betty. I'm 68 years old. Until 6 months ago, I thought I had a happy, stable family. I was recently widowed. I hadn't even made peace with losing David, my husband of more than 40 years, when my only daughter showed her true colors. It all started on a Monday morning. I was in the waiting room for a routine checkup when my phone buzzed with a message from my daughter, Laura. "Mom," I stopped by the apartment and picked up the deed to the beach house and Dad's vintage Rolex. "I already signed the papers to sell both. Tomorrow I'm leaving on a luxury Caribbean cruise. I needed the money. It's a one-way ticket. Mark is coming with me." I read that message again and again, unable to believe it. My daughter, the one I thought would be my support after David's death, had sold our family's beach house. That house was the result of 30 years of sacrifice, every brick soaked in David's sweat, and the Rolex, the only luxury item he ever owned, which never left his wrist. My hands trembled as I dialed her number. It rang, went to voicemail. I called again and again. On the 6th try, she finally answered. "What is it, Mom? I'm busy packing." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Laura, what does this message mean? You can't sell the house and your father's watch. Those belong to me." There was a pause, then a short, mocking laugh. "Legally, they belong to Dad. Look, I don't have time for drama. You still have your old apartment to live in. That's more than enough. Mark landed a last-minute spot on the cruise. We needed the cash fast." "Absolutely not you." I didn't finish before she cut me off. "Mom, it's done. The papers you signed last month gave me full power of attorney, remember? You didn't even bother to read them carefully. I signed everything legally. The money is already in my account. I've got to go. The taxi to the airport is here." "Laura, please." My voice cracked. "Stop it, Mom. You're 68 years old. You don't need a beach house anymore. Mark and I deserve to enjoy life while we're young. I'll send you some pictures from the Caribbean." Then she hung up. I sat frozen in that hard plastic chair at the clinic, phone clutched in my hand, my emotions spinning. Shame, anger, betrayal, despair. How could my own daughter do this to me? "Mrs. Betty?" The receptionist's voice broke through, though I barely heard her. "Are you all right?" I just shook my head, stood up like a machine, and asked to reschedule. I couldn't think about my health anymore. I needed to go home to make sense of what had just happened. On the way, I remembered those papers I had signed. 1 month after David's funeral, Laura had brought me a stack of documents. "Just paperwork to settle the estate, Mom. Sign here so I can handle everything for you." Still drowning in grief and trusting my daughter completely, I signed without reading. Foolish, naive. Back at the apartment, Laura called old, but to me the place where David and I had lived for 40 years, I collapsed onto the sofa. Everything there carried his presence. The armchair where he read the paper every morning, his beloved naval history books, and on the shelf, the photo of the day we bought the Florida beach house. We had saved for 15 years for that little slice of paradise, a modest wooden cottage, warm and welcoming, only a few blocks from the sea. Every summer we went there. David built the back deck with his own hands, and I planted hibiscus bushes in the front yard. It was where Laura had her sweet 16 party, where she shared her first kiss, where she introduced Mark to us. and now it was all gone with one text message, sold off for the indulgence of my selfish daughter and her freeloading husband. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the last few months when Laura had seemed so attentive after David's death. Visiting me 3 times a week, always asking about documents, bank accounts, what David had left behind. Now I understood. It wasn't concern, it was calculation. She was scouting what she could take. The next morning, with swollen eyes from crying, I decided to go to the bank. I needed to know what else Laura had done with that cursed power of attorney. The bank manager greeted me with a sympathetic look that only deepened my humiliation. "Mrs. Betty, your daughter came yesterday and withdrew almost all the money from your joint accounts." She presented the authorization, and legally we couldn't stop her. "I'm so sorry." I walked out of the bank in despair, but inside, something hard and steady began to form. I couldn't let Laura destroy everything David and I had built. I went to see a lawyer my neighbor recommended. Mr. Wallace, a calm man, listened carefully to my whole story. "The power of attorney you signed gave your daughter full control. Legally, the sales are valid. However, we could sue on grounds that you were deceived, not properly informed." "How long would that take, and what are the chances?" I asked. He sighed. "Honestly, these cases can drag on for years, and since the person who wronged you is your daughter, not a stranger, proving malicious intent will be difficult." I left his office feeling the weight of my 68 years, the decades I'd spent devoted to family, raising Laura with love, building a life with David. And now, in my twilight years, betrayed, robbed, abandoned by my only child, on. The way home, instead of sinking into despair, a strange calm took over me, a cold determination I hadn't known I possessed. David used to tell me I was stronger than I thought. Maybe it was time to prove him right. At home, I went straight to the bedroom, opened the closet, and rummaged through boxes and drawers. David had always been meticulous. If he left something, it would be hidden well. And then I remembered. 3 days before he died, David handed me a brown envelope. "Keep this in your jewelry box, Betty. If the day ever comes when you need it, open it, but I hope that day never comes." At the time, my mind was too clouded with his failing health to think twice. After his sudden death, I forgot about it entirely. I rushed to my jewelry box, thankfully. Laura had never shown interest in it. At the bottom, under necklaces and earrings I rarely wore, the faded envelope was still there. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents and a handwritten letter from David. The very first line squeezed my heart. "My beloved Betty, if you're reading this, it means something bad has happened. But don't worry. I always knew this day might come, and I prepared to protect you." I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of that envelope. David's strong, steady handwriting cut right into me. I kept reading, each line revealing parts of my husband I had never known. In our 43 years together, I learned many things. The most important, always have a plan B. While everyone thought of me as a cautious bank manager, I quietly built safeguards for you. Since Laura was young, her obsession with money and material things worried me. That's why I kept some investments secret. The beach house and the assets people knew about were only the surface. My heart pounded. David, the man who had always been so open with me, had kept this secret but for a noble reason, to protect me. I bought 3 commercial properties downtown, all fully leased. I invested in stock from major companies. I opened accounts at 2 different banks in your name, passwords only I knew. Everything is recorded in the documents enclosed. I flipped through page after page titles, bank statements, rental contracts, a fortune I never imagined. But the biggest shock, one of those buildings was the very one Laura and Mark lived in. Yes, my love, we are the true owners of the luxury condo they brag about buying. Mark never knew his father-in-law was his landlord. I had to stop and catch my breath. David had purchased the building where our daughter lived, through a holding company. I know Mark too well. His arrogance, his lies about risky investments. I saw how he led our daughter astray. This is my final gift to you, Betty, the power of choice. You can reveal everything now and take back control, or you can wait and see how ungrateful Laura becomes. The decision is yours. The letter ended with detailed instructions on accessing accounts, a list of trusted lawyers, and one last line that made me cry through a smile. Remember what I always told you. You are so much stronger than you think. With all my love, David. I spent hours reviewing those papers. By my calculations, I now owned assets worth at least 5 times the value of the beach house and the money Laura stole. I was not a helpless widow. I was a wealthy woman. That night, for the first time since David died, I slept peacefully. The next morning, I dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant dress David had always liked, and went to see attorney William Harris, one of the names David had listed. Unlike the young lawyer I'd seen before, Mr. Harris was a silver-haired gentleman with sharp eyes. He listened to my story and reviewed every document David had left. "Betty," he said, adjusting his glasses, "your husband was an exceptionally smart man. He arranged everything perfectly. There's no doubt you are a very wealthy woman. And, yes, we can reclaim the beach house and the watch, but allow me to suggest another approach." "I'm listening," I said. He gave a small smile. "Your daughter thinks she's left you with nothing. So why not let her keep believing that for a while? Meanwhile, we'll quietly secure every asset, especially the building where she and her husband live." I understood instantly. "You're suggesting that my daughter should discover the truth the hard way," he nodded. "I'm suggesting she needs to learn a lesson about consequences, Betty. Sometimes justice has to be felt to be understood." I left his office with a plan forming. Mr. Harris would immediately begin transferring all assets into my name, voiding the power of attorney on grounds that I had been deceived while emotionally vulnerable. More importantly, he would issue an eviction notice to Laura and Mark as soon as they returned from their trip. For the next few weeks, I kept up appearances, grocery shopping, chatting with neighbors, attending my book club. Everyone looked at me with pity, as though I were just an old woman abandoned by her child. My story had spread through the neighborhood. My longtime neighbor Helen found reasons to stop by daily borrowing sugar, showing off grandkids' photos. "Betty, have you spoken to Laura? I saw her Facebook pictures. She's on some luxury cruise." I shook my head. "No, Helen, I haven't." She sighed. "It's shameful. After everything you and David did for her to sell that beach house just to splurge with that so-called investor husband of hers." I gave a faint smile, pouring more tea. "Life has a way of teaching lessons, Helen. One way or another, it always does." She looked at me puzzled. How could she understand my calm when no one knew about David's letter and the documents now locked safely in Mr. Harris's vault? On the 3rd weekend, I received the first call from Laura. "Mom, how are you?" Her voice was light, as if she hadn't stolen memories and sold off the sacred place our family once called home. "I'm fine, Laura." I kept my tone neutral, hiding the storm inside me. "We're having such a great time. The trip is amazing." Mark even met a few Canadian investors who are very interested in his project. We might stay a few more weeks. Good for you, I answered curtly, making her pause. Mom, I know selling the house and Dad's watch upset you, but you'll see it was for the best. You didn't use that house, it just sat empty all year. And the watch was only lying in a drawer. I drew a deep breath. Each word was a knife. That house wasn't empty, it was filled with sweat, love, and memories. And David's watch? How could she reduce it to a useless trinket? When are you coming back, Laura? Probably in about a month. Why do you ask? If you need anything, just have my assistant handle it. No, I just wanted to know. Go on, enjoy yourself. I hung up, sadness and determination tangled inside me. This was not the daughter I thought I had raised, or maybe it was, and I had simply been blind to the signs David had always seen. In the weeks that followed, Attorney Harris called me daily with updates. Everything was going according to plan. All the properties were now in my name, the bank accounts under my control, the power of attorney canceled, and the building Laura and Mark lived in legally mine. Everything is ready, Betty. The moment they return, they'll receive notice they have 30 days to vacate the apartment. The law was on my side. The company that once held the title now belonged to me outright. I wasn't obligated to keep tenants I didn't want, not even my own daughter. Legally and morally, I had every right. Those two words, morally and legally, echoed in my mind. I had the power, but did I have the courage? After all, Laura was still my only child. One night, I went into her old bedroom. Sitting on the edge of her bed, I picked up a photo from the shelf. Laura at 5, sitting on David's lap on the beach house balcony. Both smiling brightly, strawberry ice cream dripping down her hand, while he gazed at her with boundless love. Where is that little girl now, David? Where did we go wrong? I whispered into the empty room. Just then the phone rang. It was Harris. Betty, I just got word. Your daughter and her husband are flying back tomorrow. They're on a flight from Miami to New York tonight. The moment had come. Time for truth, for justice, or for mercy. Send the notice, Mr. Harris. Are you certain? Once the process begins. I'm certain. It's time my daughter understood that every action has a price. That night I couldn't sleep. I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights, imagining the plane carrying Laura closer and closer to the moment that would change our lives. I remembered the day she was born, David's tears as he held her for the first time, his vow to be the best father. We had worked so hard to give her everything. Back then, we weren't wealthy. David's hidden fortune came later. At first, we were just a middle-class family with simple dreams and solid values, or so I believed. The next morning, I received Harris's message. The notice has been delivered to the building. Security confirms they returned an hour ago. My heart pounded. Now it was only a matter of time. I brewed coffee, dressed carefully, not as a broken widow, but as a woman in control. I sat waiting. I knew Laura would come, angry and confused, and she did. The bell rang. When I opened the door, I saw my daughter, her face drawn from the flight, clutching a crumpled paper. Behind her stood Mark, pale and furious. What does this mean? She shoved the eviction notice against my chest. Is this some sick joke? I kept calm, though my pulse raced. Good morning, Laura. Come in, let's talk like adults. They entered. Mark looked around as if he'd never been there before. Laura tossed her designer purse onto the sofa, a Louis Vuitton that once cost the same as 3 months of David's early salary. There's nothing to talk about. We come home exhausted, only to find this madness and eviction from our own apartment. And worse, The papers say you're the owner." I sat in David's favorite chair. "This is no joke, no madness. This is the truth. I own the building you live in." Mark jabbed a finger at me. "Nonsense. We bought that condo 3 years ago. We have the papers. You only bought a long-term lease. Ownership of the entire building has always belonged to Secure Holdings, a company under David's name and now mine. Everything is legal." Laura's face turned pale. Mark looked stunned. "This is impossible," Laura stammered. "Dad was just a bank manager. How could he own a building?" "Your father was more than you ever gave him credit for. He was smarter, saw further, and knew exactly what kind of daughter he had." Laura sank into the chair, smaller and weaker than I had ever seen her. "Why didn't he ever tell us?" "Because he knew what you would do if you knew. And he was right, wasn't he?" Mark, once so arrogant, now looked like a scared child. "This can't be legal. We'll sue." I gave a thin smile. "Go ahead. Harris has prepared everything. Every investment, every transaction is transparent and lawful." "Harris?" Laura's eyes widened. "Yes. The best real estate lawyer, and the man helping me reclaim the beach house and your father's watch." "Reclaim?" she gasped. "Yes. The sale you pushed through has been voided. The power of attorney you tricked me into signing while I was grieving is no longer valid. The beach house is mine again. As for the watch, unfortunately you sold it overseas, but we're working to track it down." Mark raked his hair in agitation. "This is insane." "Completely insane." I looked straight at him. "No, Mark. Insanity was stealing from a grieving widow. That was the madness and the cruelty." Laura burst into tears, but I didn't flinch. I had seen those tears before when she wanted a new car, when she fought with her first boyfriend, when she needed money for one of Mark's failed ventures. Always tears with an agenda. "Mom, I'm sorry. It was a mistake. We were desperate." Mark had a huge opportunity on the cruise. He met investors who could change our lives. "And how did that turn out?" I asked, reading the defeat on Mark's face. "Not as expected," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Never is it, Mark? The big deals, the once-in-a-lifetime chances, the risky investments. David warned you time and again." "Wait," Laura cut in, as if struck by an idea. "If Dad was that wealthy, if you have all this property, why are you doing this to us? Why not help? We're family." Her words hit me like a slap. The shamelessness of the daughter I had raised. After everything, she still thought she was entitled to my help. "Family?" My voice rose sharper than intended. "Did you remember we were family when you sold the house your father sweated over? When you took the watch he wore for 40 years, the watch he had planned to give you on your birthday? When you drained my accounts, leaving me to wonder how I'd pay my bills?" Laura dropped her head, but Mark stepped forward. "Betty, everyone makes mistakes. We admit we did wrong, but throwing us out on the street is too cruel. Where will we go?" I met his eyes. "And where would I be if you had succeeded? Did you think about that before you robbed me?" The silence was my answer. "You have 30 days to find another place. And Laura, if you want to take me to court, go ahead. But remember, I can also change my will. Right now you're the sole heir. That can change." I saw despair in her eyes. Laura had always been practical, ambitious. The message was clear. If she fought me, she could lose even more. "Mom, please." She reached for my hand. "We can work this out. I was wrong, but don't put me on the street." I stayed calm. "You won't be on the street, Laura. You still have money, the money from the house and your father's watch. Use it to rent something modest." I stood, ending it. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." In truth, I didn't. I just needed them gone so I could breathe. Watching my daughter beg, after all, her arrogance didn't bring the satisfaction I once imagined. Only emptiness, only sorrow for what my family had become. When the door closed behind them, I sat in David's favorite armchair and let the tears flow. Not for myself, not even for Laura, but for the dream of family that had shattered, for the illusion I had carried for decades. The phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. It was Harris. "Mrs. Betty, is everything all right?" "Yes, sir. My daughter and her husband just left." "And how are you?" I hesitated, then answered, "At peace." Not happy, not satisfied, just at peace for doing what had to be done. "And the other matters? The beach house is officially back in your name. Would you like to visit this week?" I closed my eyes, picturing our haven, the little paradise where David planted his roses, where we spent countless Christmases, where we planned to grow old together. "Yes, I'd like to go tomorrow. I'll arrange a car for you." Hanging up, I looked at David's photo on the wall. He smiled with eyes that always seemed to know more than he said. "You were right," I whispered. "Right about Laura, about Mark, about the need for a backup plan. I hope you're right about me too, that I'm strong enough to go on." That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. The next morning, the car Harris arranged took me to the Florida coast. The house appeared, exactly as I remembered. A pale blue cottage with white trim, the little front garden overgrown, the ocean stretching beyond. My throat tightened as I walked the stone path David had fixed one summer. The key turned heavy in the lock, the door opened, and the scent of salt and wood swept over me. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling the old wallpaper. I moved through each room, touching objects, stirring memories. On the living room wall were pencil marks tracking Laura's height every summer. In the kitchen, the table where David always insisted on drinking coffee with a view of the sea, even on gray days. In the bedroom, the bed neatly covered with the white sheet he always laid out when we closed the house for the season. I stepped onto the back deck he had built, the boards creaking under my feet. I sat on the swing, gazing at the ocean. There, I felt David closer than ever. "What should I do?" I whispered, into the breeze. After all, she's still our daughter. I spent the day cleaning, arranging, reconnecting with every corner. As the sun set, I knew I didn't want to leave. I called Harris and told him to send the car the next day. In the closet there were still clean linens, in the kitchen a little dry food, just as we had always kept on hand. That night, alone in the beach house, felt like a healing ritual. I slept in our bedroom and dreamed of David. In the dream, he was out on the porch, fixing a loose board. "Did you always know this would happen?" I asked. "No, I didn't know. I only sensed it. Mark always had that greedy look in his eyes, and Laura, our daughter, she always looked for shortcuts. So, what do I do now?" He lifted his head and gave me the smile I loved most. "Follow your heart, Betty. You've always been the moral compass of this family. I only built the frame. You're the one who gave it direction." I woke with sunlight streaming through the shutters. For a moment I thought David was still beside me, that all of it had been a nightmare, his death, Laura's betrayal, the eviction. But reality came back. I drank a simple cup of coffee and sat on the back porch. There, I made my decision. Laura had to learn a lesson, but I didn't want to lose her forever. No matter what, she was still my daughter. When Harris's car came to pick me up, I already had a new plan. I went back to the city, straight to his office. He greeted me with his usual professionalism, but noticed the determination on my face. "I want to make a change," I told him. What kind of change, Betty? I'll go forward with the eviction, but I want to give Laura and Mark another choice. I'll let them rent a smaller apartment in another building I own. Nothing fancy, nothing luxurious, just decent, simple. But with conditions. What conditions? Mark has to get a real job. No more schemes, no more pipe dreams. A legitimate job with steady pay. And Laura has to volunteer at a charity I choose, at least 3 days a week. Harris smiled. You're not just punishing them, you're trying to retrain them. Exactly. David and I made the mistake of indulging Laura, giving her everything without teaching her the value of work and sacrifice. Maybe it's not too late to fix that. And if they refuse, I sighed, then they'll live off the money they took. A few months, and they'll have to find their own way. He wrote it all down. When do you want to present this offer? Tomorrow. The sooner, the better. I left his office feeling lighter. My decision wasn't born of hatred, but of love, a stricter kind of love, demanding, but love all the same. On the way home, I stopped at a jeweler's. In the glass case was a watch like David's. It could never replace his, but it reminded me. I bought it not to substitute for the original I still hope to find, but as a symbol of time, the most precious possession. Time never comes back, but from now on I could. Use mine better. When I got home, I saw 3 messages from Laura, each more desperate than the last. In the final one, she begged to see me, said she regretted everything, that she had made the worst mistake of her life. I called her back. Her voice was raw, as if she had cried herself empty. Mom, please, can we talk? I'm desperate. Mark and I had a terrible fight. He even threatened to move back to his mother's. I don't know what to do. Fine. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Come here. If Mark is willing, bring him too. I have an offer for both of you. What kind of offer? Tomorrow, Laura, 10 o'clock. I hung up, my heart caught between anxiety and hope. Part of me wanted to believe there was still a chance, that my daughter might relearn true values. Another part feared I was only delaying the inevitable. That night, I placed the new watch beside David's photo on the nightstand. We'll see if you were right about our daughter, I whispered to him. You always believed there was kindness in her, even when I doubted. The next morning, at 10:05, the bell rang. When I opened the door, Laura stood alone. Her face was worn like I had never seen, no makeup, hair unkempt, eyes swollen from crying. She wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, a far cry from her designer clothes. Mark didn't come with you? I asked, stepping aside. No, he said he wouldn't lower himself to beg. He moved back to his mother's last night. Laura dropped onto the sofa, small and fragile. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to run to me after scraping her knee. I shook the image away. This was not the time to soften. You said you had an offer? She asked hesitantly. I sat across from her. Yes, but first I need to understand. Why, Laura? Why did you do this to me? I'm your mother. I gave you everything I could. She lowered her head, twisting her hands. I don't know how to explain, Mom. It came out piece by piece. Mark told her they needed money to invest, that it would only be temporary, that they'd pay me back. And you believed that? I asked. I wanted to, Mom. He always convinces me. From the very beginning, he painted this life of luxury and opportunity. I got swept up in it. And the beach house, your father's watch? How could you sell things with so much meaning? A tear slid down her cheek. I told myself they were just objects, that memories were what mattered. Mark said you weren't using the house, and the watch was just sitting in a drawer. Now I see how awful that was. Yes, awful, because it was exactly that, Laura. You stripped away everything you thought I had. If your father hadn't left that envelope, I would have been left with nothing. She flinched as if struck. I know. I have no excuse. I can only say I regret it. Truly regret it. I studied her, trying to see if this remorse was real or only born of exposure and loss. Here's my offer, I said. The eviction stands. You will both leave the apartment in 30 days, as notified. She nodded, resigned. But I will give you another chance. A smaller apartment in another building I own. Decent, but not lavish. Her eyes lit up. Really, Mom? With conditions. What conditions? Mark must get a real job, not some wild scheme, honest work, with a contract and steady pay. She bit her lip. I don't know if he'll agree. That's his problem. I'm speaking to you. The second condition is for you. For me, you will volunteer 3 days a week at Street Mary's nursing home. There you'll see how abandoned elders live, and you'll understand what you nearly did to me. Laura bowed her head in shame. For how long? No set time. I'll see how serious you are, then decide. She nodded slowly. And the money you got from the house and the watch, you'll have to live on it. The apartment I provide is just housing, food, bills. Everything else is your responsibility. If Mark won't work, then you must. I saw fear in her eyes. Laura had never worked a day in her life. She'd lived off David's support, then Mark's borrowed money poured into reckless ventures. What if Mark refuses? Then you'll have to choose, Laura. Choose your husband or choose redemption. She swallowed hard. Can I think about it a few days? Yes, but give me an answer by the weekend. When she stood to leave, she looked weighed down by the world. At the door, she turned back. Mom, about Dad's watch. Mark sold it to an American collector on the yacht. I have his contact. Maybe we can get it back. Thank you for telling me, I said, and for a moment I glimpsed the daughter I once knew. After Laura left, I called Harris and recounted the talk. He approved, but reminded me to have a written agreement if she accepted. Mrs. Betty, I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but be prepared she might refuse or agree and then back out. I'm ready, I told him. I have no illusions about my daughter anymore, only a little hope. The next days passed in tension, no word from Laura, though I wasn't surprised. She was likely trying to persuade Mark or weighing her options. To keep busy, I threw myself into repairing the beach house. The porch needed work, some roof tiles were loose, the garden long neglected. I hired a crew and oversaw them myself. While they inspected, I walked along the shore. It was a quiet Monday morning, no tourists around. The sand was nearly empty. I walked and walked, letting the fine grains sift under my feet, the salty breeze wash my face. Suddenly I realized I was smiling a true smile, for the first time since David died. Maybe I could rebuild a life, even without the partner of 40 years. Maybe there was still good ahead, and maybe, just maybe, my daughter could be part of that journey. By Wednesday, Laura called. Mom, I accept your offer. As for Mark, she hesitated. He won't. He said he won't stoop to menial work. He's going into business with an uncle. He's going his own way. And you? I'll stay. I want to make it right, Mom. I know it'll take time. You won't trust me overnight, but I want to try. We agreed to meet at Harris's office to sign. The next day, Laura arrived on time, dressed simply but neatly, no longer showing off. Harris read the terms. She would live in a 2-bedroom unit in the Palm Street building, rent-free, but responsible for all living expenses. She must volunteer at street, Mary's at least 12 hours a week, and find paying work within 60 days. Any violation and eviction would be immediate. I agree, Laura said and signed. Afterward, I took her to see the apartment. Small, modest, but cozy, far from her former luxury. There's parking, though you don't have a car now, right? I asked in the elevator. Right. Mark took it. It was in his name. I understand. Then you'll take the bus for now. She nodded. Inside, Laura looked around with a strange expression, not quite disappointed, not entirely sad, maybe just realizing her new reality. It's small, but it's enough, I said, opening the window. Basic furniture is here, and a new fridge. It's perfect, Mom. Thank you. You can move in any time. Here are the keys. At the door, she paused. Mom, can I ask you something? Do you think one day you'll truly forgive me? Not just give me another chance, but really trust me again? The question caught me off guard. It was what I asked myself. I don't know, Laura. Trust is like crystal. Once broken, even glued back together, the cracks remain. She nodded, swallowing tears. I understand, but I still want to try, because you're my mom. I'm sorry for everything. In the days that followed, I watched from a distance as Laura moved in. Strange to see her carry the boxes herself, no luxury staff, no Mark. A 43-year-old woman starting over almost from nothing. Her first volunteer day at St. Mary's fell on a Monday. I went with her, introducing her to Christine, the director, and an old friend. Laura will be here 3 days a week, I said. Give her whatever needs doing. Christine, who already knew the story, gave her a stern look. The activity hall is short-staffed. Many residents haven't had visitors in years. They need someone to listen. I can do that, Laura answered, sounding genuinely earnest. I watched her walk down the hall with Christine, meeting the elderly. I saw eyes brighten with hope, hope of someone who might care, who might remember their names next time. I left the home with mixed feelings. Part of me wanted to believe Laura was changing, that we could mend. Part of me remained wary, waiting for her to tire of this simpler life and quit. About a month later, one afternoon, I got a call from Christine. My heart clenched, fearing the worst. What happened? Mr. Jenkins, the Alzheimer's patient, had a severe outburst yesterday. The nurses couldn't calm him. Do you know who did? Laura. I froze. How? She just sat with him, held his hand, and softly hummed a lullaby. Within minutes, he was calm. Later we learned it was the song his mother used to sing when he was a child. He had told Laura in a rare moment of clarity, and she remembered. I froze, Christine went on. I don't know what happened between you and your daughter, and I don't need to, but I have to say this. Your daughter has a gift with the elderly. She truly listens. She truly cares. When I hung up, I sat in silence. A different Laura was starting to emerge. Someone I had never known. A daughter who remembered details from the childhood of an old man with Alzheimer's, who sang lullabies to calm him, who even volunteered an extra day each week. I decided to visit her at the new apartment. She had given me a key in case of emergencies, but I still rang the bell. When she opened the door, Laura looked completely different. It wasn't just the absence of expensive clothes or heavy makeup. It was her whole demeanor, calmer, more focused. "Mom, what a surprise!" she exclaimed, then hugged me, a gesture I hadn't felt in years. The apartment was clean and tidy, unexpectedly so. On the living room wall, I noticed something that startled me. small, simple frames holding photos of the residents at St. Mary's nursing home. "They're my friends," Laura explained when she saw me looking. "I want them around me to remind me why I'm doing this." In the kitchen, cookbooks were spread open on the counter with handwritten notes scribbled in the margins. "I'm learning to cook," she said with an embarrassed smile. "I never needed to before because Mark always wanted to eat at fancy restaurants, but now I have to save money." We talked for hours. She told me about her work at the nursing home, about job searches, about the little money left from selling the beach house. Mark took most of it before he left, said he needed it for that business with his uncle. I have less than a third now. "And how do you feel?" I asked. "Honestly, relieved. Mark was toxic, Mom. I just didn't see it sooner." Before I left, I noticed an open notebook on the table with names and numbers written beside them. "What's this?" I asked. "A repayment plan. I'm figuring out how much I owe you for Dad's watch and the house." "Laura, you don't have that money." "Not yet, but I will. I'm saving, and when I find steady work, I'll set some aside each month." I left the apartment with my mind spinning. This was not the Laura I had known, or maybe for the first time I was finally seeing who she truly was, free from Mark's shadow and the false life they had built. In the following months, I watched her change. She found a job as a receptionist at a clinic. A simple job, modest pay, but she did it with enthusiasm. "It's just a start, Mom. Besides, the clinic is close to the nursing home, so I can keep volunteering." At home, I began organizing David's things, not to throw them away, but to preserve them carefully. As I sorted through a box of documents, I found an old envelope at the bottom labeled, "Open only when our daughter finds her way again." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "My dearest Betty, if you are reading this, it means Laura has found her direction again. I don't know how or how long it took. Maybe it was easy. Maybe it came through painful lessons. But I believe in her. Our daughter has always had a good heart, only hidden beneath materialism and bad influences. I saw it a few times when she cared for you during your pneumonia, when she stood up for a classmate who was bullied, when she cried over a stray dog on the street. The world hardened her. We, without meaning to, spoiled her too much. Then Mark came along, who only valued money. But a person's true nature can't stay hidden forever. In this envelope, there's one last gift for you and our daughter." With the letter was a deed to a small piece of land beside the beach house. "I bought it years ago to expand the house, but now I think it could serve a better purpose. Build something new there, Betty, together with our daughter. Maybe a guest house, a new home, or even a shelter for the elderly with nowhere to go. What matters is that you build it together brick by brick, decision by decision. Let the past rest and create a symbol of a new beginning. Loving you always, David." I sat for hours with the letter in my hand. Even in death, David was still guiding us, still believing in redemption. Could it really be possible that Laura and I could rebuild, leaving the past behind? The next day, I invited Laura to lunch, choosing a small cafe near her clinic. She arrived on time in her uniform, a plain white blouse and black slacks. "Is everything all right, Mom? Why the sudden invitation?" she asked, nervous. "Last night I found this," I said, handing her David's letter. I watched her face as she read. Surprise, emotion, regret, then finally hope. Dad really believed in me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He always believed more than I did, especially in you," I reminded her. "So what do you think of his idea? Building something together?" I looked at her, not the cold stranger who had once betrayed me, but the new woman rising up. Someone working honestly, caring for abandoned elders, striving to make amends. I think it's exactly what we need. A project that forces us to cooperate, to trust again. We don't know what we'll build yet, but we can start by visiting the land this weekend. The bright smile on her face reminded me of the Laura I once knew, the little girl who played at the beach house, built sandcastles with her father, dreamed of becoming a vet to save all the abandoned animals. I'd love that, Mom, more than you know. That weekend we returned to the beach house. It had been fully restored. Sturdy porch, no leaks in the roof, the front garden replanted with David's favorite flowers. "It's beautiful, Mom," Laura whispered, walking through the garden as if stepping back into childhood. Together we crossed onto the neighboring lot. Small, but in a perfect spot overlooking the sea, level ground, ready for building. "What do you think we should do here?" I asked, watching as Laura paced, examining it like a child exploring new land. She stayed quiet for a long time before turning, her eyes sparkling. "Mom, what if we build a seaside retreat for the elderly? A place where the residents from the home can come for holidays or summers. Many of them have never seen the ocean. Imagine Mr. Jenkins sitting on this porch, looking out at the sea." I was stunned. I expected her to suggest something profitable, a guest house, rental apartments. But no, this was purely selfless. "That would be a big investment, no financial return," I challenged. "I know," she answered quickly. "But the reward would come in another form. I could contribute from my paycheck. It'll take time, but we can do it piece by piece." I studied her carefully and finally saw what David had always insisted was there, her kindness. "We'll do it, but not piece by piece. I have the means. We'll design and build it fully, so the elderly have everything they need." Laura's smile shone like the sun after a storm. "Really, Mom?" "Really. But we'll do it together just as your father wished." In the weeks that followed, we met with architects, engineers, and elder care specialists. Laura made time on her days off, contributing ideas from her experience at the home. "Mom, we need handrails in the halls, non-slip flooring. Mrs. Olivia has fallen twice already." It was miraculous to see her so dedicated to a project that brought no material gain. This was a Laura I had never known, or maybe her true self, finally revealed. As the project moved forward, our relationship changed too. Old wounds began to heal. Not completely, the scars would always remain, but enough to start anew. One afternoon, while we were reviewing blueprints in her apartment, Laura suddenly asked, "Mom, do you think someday you'll truly trust me again?" I paused, looking into her eyes. It was the same question she had asked when she first moved into the small apartment. "I'm beginning to trust again. But Laura, trust doesn't come back overnight. You broke something very deep in me." She nodded, eyes brimming. "I know. I regret it every day, every time I see Mrs. Clelia at the home, waiting for children who never come. I think I almost did that to you. But you didn't. Not completely. And now here we are, building again." She smiled through tears. "Sometimes I think Dad foresaw this, that I needed to hit rock bottom to find my way back." I nodded softly. "Your father always saw further than the rest of us." 6 months after the project began, the seaside home for the elderly was nearly finished. We named it David Haven in memory of the man who, even in death, still bound our family together. The home had 6 specially designed rooms, a large common room with an ocean view, a communal kitchen, and a porch connected to the main house. Every detail was thought through for comfort and safety. "When can we welcome the first guests?" Laura asked eagerly at each visit. "Patience, my girl. I want everything perfect," I replied. While the house was being built, Laura continued her transformation. She was promoted at the clinic to an administrative position with better pay. She kept volunteering, now even running a reading program for residents with poor eyesight, and to my surprise, she began studying to apply for nursing school. "I always wanted to work in healthcare," she admitted, "but Mark always said it was a waste of time, that I was too old to start." "It's never too late to begin again," I told her, proud of her resolve. One day, when I visited the nursing home, Christine pulled me aside. "Betty, I don't know what happened between you and Laura, and I don't need to. But I have to tell you this. Your daughter saved this place." I was startled. "Saved? What do you mean?" "Not literally. But since she started the reading program and memory exercises, everything has changed. The residents have more purpose, more joy. Now they look forward to the days Laura comes." I left with my heart full. Laura wasn't just repaying a debt she had found her calling. When David Haven was finally finished, we held a small opening ceremony. 6 residents from the nursing home were chosen as the first guests. Among them was Mr. Jenkins, the Alzheimer's patient Laura had once soothed with a lullaby. That day he was clear-eyed, holding Laura's hand as she showed him his room. "It's like a luxury hotel," he exclaimed, eyes glowing as he looked out at the ocean. Standing on the balcony, I felt a presence beside me. Not something supernatural, just a strong sense that David was still there, watching his final gift to us come to life. "Dad would be so proud," Laura said, stepping next to me. "Yes, he would," I agreed. "Proud of both of us." She hesitated, then hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I held her close. Family doesn't abandon family, even when it hurts. That night we stayed in the main house, while Christine and a nurse looked after the residents at David Haven. My daughter and I sat on the porch, watching the stars the way we used to with David. "Mom, do you know what hurts me the most?" Laura asked softly. "That I can never give back Dad's watch. It meant so much to him, to you." I hesitated, then pulled out the watch I had bought months earlier, almost identical to the original. "It's not the old one, but it helps me feel like your father is still close somehow." She held the watch, studied it, then nodded. "It looks almost the same. But you're right. What matters are the memories tied to it, and memories can't be sold or stolen." A peaceful silence wrapped around us, broken only by the sound of the waves. I looked at my daughter under the moonlight, seeing not only the child I raised or the woman who once betrayed me, but a complex person capable of terrible mistakes, yet also capable of remarkable redemption. "Mom, I still have a long way to go, don't I?" she asked. "We all do, sweetheart. Life is about beginning again and again." A year after the opening, David Haven hadn't grown in size, but in meaning. Every 2 weeks, a new group of residents came for short stays. Laura had taken on the responsibility of coordinating the project, balancing her clinic job, her nursing studies, and her volunteer work. More than once I found her asleep over her books, but her eyes always shone with a fulfillment no money could buy. As for me, I found a new purpose too. Richard, the lawyer, convinced me to use part of the inheritance David left to establish a small trust called the David Foundation, dedicated to helping elderly people in need. The fund paid for medical bills, made homes safer, and even granted small dreams like the 92-year-old woman's wish to return to her hometown after 60 years. One Sunday morning, while I was having coffee on the porch, Laura handed me an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it, Mom." Inside was a check and a handwritten note. I looked at her, puzzled. "It's the first payment," she explained, "toward the promise I made to repay you." In the note, she had carefully detailed the value of the house and the watch, promising to repay it little by little over the years. "Laura, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, Mom, not for the money, but to keep my word, to make things right." I stared at the check for a long time. What should I even do with this? "It's yours, Mom, whatever you want." An idea sparked. What if we use it at David Haven to build a ramp so wheelchairs can roll down to the beach? Her eyes lit up. That would be perfect. That money wasn't just money, it was trust being rebuilt, a promise being kept, a wound slowly healing. That very afternoon, an unexpected guest arrived. A car stopped, and out stepped someone we hadn't seen in over a year. Mark, thinner, unshaven, dressed plainly instead of in his flashy suits. He lingered at the gate. Laura, who was in the garden, saw him first. Her face shifted, not anger as I expected, but cautious curiosity. "Mark, what are you doing here?" He walked slowly closer. "I need to talk. It's important. Laura." I looked at me. I watched from the balcony. She suggested they go to the back porch to talk. I stayed inside, resisting the urge to eavesdrop, though worry gnawed at me. After everything Laura had built, the last thing she needed was Mark disrupting her balance. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. When they came back, Mark looked shaken, and Laura seemed surprised but calm. "He came to say goodbye," she told me. "He's moving to Portugal to work for a travel company in Lisbon." Mark shook my hand, avoiding my eyes. "Mrs. Betty, I want to apologize. I know sorry isn't enough." "It isn't," I said evenly, "but it's a start." He pulled out a small package. "I managed to get this back." My hands trembled as I opened it. David's watch, worn, the glass scratched, but unmistakably his, the one he had worn for years. How is this possible? An American collector had bought it. By chance he was at the same hotel as me in Lisbon. At first he refused, but when he heard the story, he finally agreed. I held the watch, feeling its familiar weight, as if part of David had been returned to me. "Thank you." "It's the least I could do," he said quietly. "I have to go. My flight leaves tomorrow morning." Laura walked him to the car. They exchanged a few words, then, to my surprise, embraced briefly before he left. When she came back, her eyes were red, but her expression calm. "Are you all right?" I asked. "Yes. It feels like closing a chapter. Mark lost everything and has to start over. Maybe that's what it took for him to change." "People can change," I said, giving her a knowing look. "Yes, they can. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find something better in yourself." That night, I placed David's watch back on the nightstand. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I stared at it, remembering every moment he had looked at it. The day Laura was born, our wedding anniversary, the day we bought the beach house, our last morning together. "It's all right now, David," I whispered. "Our daughter has found her way, and so have I." The months that followed fell into a steady rhythm. I divided my time between the city apartment and the beach house, managing the foundation and helping at David Haven. Laura juggled 3 roles: work, study, volunteering, but her eyes always held that steady light. David Haven was featured in the local press, praised as an oasis for the elderly who rarely had the chance to see the ocean. The article brought attention, donations, and new volunteers. One afternoon, while we were celebrating Mrs. Olivia's birthday, one of the regular visitors, Laura surprised me with a new idea. "Mom, what if we expanded? Not in space, but in meaning." Her eyes shone. "What if we created a program to connect the elderly with children? So many of the residents have no contact with their own grandchildren, and so many children in orphanages have never known grandparents. We could create a kind of spiritual adoption for both sides." The idea was simple but brilliant. Within weeks, we partnered with an orphanage in New Jersey and launched a pilot program. The change was immediate and profound. Residents who rarely spoke now told stories to their grandchildren. Children who rarely smiled now ran into the arms of their grandparents. On one visit, I saw Laura sitting in the sand with Mr. Redding round. Jenkins and a 5-year-old girl named Julia, all three building sandcastles and laughing as the waves rushed in. A scene I could never have imagined 2 years earlier. My daughter, who once sold the beach house without a thought, now spending her free day bringing joy to an old man with Alzheimer's and a little orphan. "She was born for this," Christine whispered beside me. "Born to care, to connect people. I've never seen anyone with such a natural gift." "I think so too," I said, moved. "And to think we almost lost it." All. One afternoon after shopping, I found Laura sitting on the porch of the main house, gazing at the sea. I quietly sat beside her. "Do you know what you're thinking about?" I asked. She turned. "I'm thinking about the circle of life. 2 years ago, I sold this house for a luxury cruise, never thinking about you, only chasing shallow pleasures. Now, I can't imagine anywhere more precious than this." I squeezed her hand gently. "What matters is where we are now, not where we were." She nodded. "But I can't forget the past. It reminds me of who I don't want to be again." I smiled. "That's the value of the past. It teaches us, shapes us, but we can't let it imprison us. Mom, can I ask you something honestly?" She continued. "That day you discovered I had sold the house and Dad's watch, how did you really feel? Beyond anger and betrayal." My throat tightened as old memories rushed back. I felt like a failure as a mother. I wondered what I had done wrong to raise a daughter capable of that. That was the deepest pain. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom. I regret it every single day." "I know, sweetheart, and every day I forgive you a little more." We sat in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky orange. From David Haven came the sound of laughter, the elderly and children playing dominoes with volunteers. "Do you know what your father would say right now?" Laura asked with a small smile. "What?" "That everything will turn out all right." I laughed. It was exactly what David always said. So optimistic it sometimes annoyed me, but in the end, he was always right. "I think he's watching us now," I said. We both smiled, feeling his presence not as a ghost, but as a force that bound us together, a living legacy carried on in everything we did. That night, after everyone left David Haven, I sat alone on the porch, watching the lights of boats offshore. I pulled out David's watch, which I now carried with me like a talisman. "You were right," I whispered. "About our daughter, about life, about new beginnings." For the first time since his death, I felt true peace, not resignation, but a deep understanding that his love and wisdom lived on through us, through David Haven bearing his name, through our daughter's transformation, and through my own rebirth as a stronger, wiser woman. The next morning, when Laura came for breakfast, she carried a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "An application for a gerontology residency. After I finish nursing, I want to specialize in elder care." I looked at her with overwhelming pride. This was David's true legacy, not money or property, but values blooming in our daughter. "Your father would be so proud," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She smiled. "I know, but are you proud, Mom?" "More than you could ever imagine." Time passed. 3 years since Laura had first shown me that folder. Now at 71, I look back on the journey and hardly recognize all that has happened. From one painful betrayal, we found a path of redemption that touched dozens of lives around us. David Haven became larger than we ever dreamed. With the foundation's support and donations inspired by the press, we bought the neighboring lot to expand. Now there were 12 rooms instead of 6, each designed for the elderly's needs. The program connecting the elderly and children became a model, drawing attention from social workers, psychologists, even officials from the Department of Health. Laura graduated at the top of her nursing class and earned a place in the gerontology residency she had dreamed of. She balanced studies, work at David Haven, and research, staying up many nights, but I never once heard her complain. If anything, she drew energy from the purpose she had found. As for Mark, we only heard bits and pieces. He settled in Lisbon, working for a Lost Fan travel company. From a few emails to Laura, I learned he lived simply, honestly, and was now engaged to a Portuguese woman. It seemed he too had found his own path to redemption. One Sunday afternoon, as I helped celebrate Mr. Jenkins's 90th birthday, his health had improved so much since coming to David Haven, I received a call from Richard, the lawyer. "Mrs. Betty, I have news about David's will," he said, his tone hard to read. "But the will was opened years ago," I replied. "No, this is a second one. He instructed it to be opened exactly 5 years after his passing. That deadline is next week." My heart pounded. David and his surprises, even after all these years. "When can we see it?" I asked quickly. "On the date he specified. He insisted both you and Laura must be present." The following week, Laura and I sat in Richard's office, restless. She held my hand tightly. "Are you ready?" Richard asked, holding a sealed envelope. We nodded. He carefully opened it and pulled out a handwritten letter along with several legal papers. "I'll read the letter first," he said. The familiar, bold handwriting appeared before us. "My dear Betty and Laura, if you are reading this, it means 5 years have passed since I left. It means you have weathered the storms I feared, but also that you found your way back to each other. After years as a banker, I learned to prepare for every scenario. The earlier envelope was for the worst case. This one is for the best case when the two of you overcome the trials and once again hold each other's hands." He had kept one last secret, a small island off the coast of Maine. He had bought it years ago when it was nothing but untouched wilderness, unnoticed by anyone. Now it was a preserved paradise. He didn't want us to sell it or use it for commercial gain. This was a sanctuary, an environmental legacy. Along with the deed was the charter for the Island of Hope Foundation, dedicated to protecting the land and using it for education and healing. He imagined children learning about the environment, the elderly finding peace on the trails, researchers studying ecosystems, and he imagined the two of us managing it all, extending the work he hoped we had begun on the piece of land beside the beach house. This was his final gift, not to be spent, but to be lived out. A mission to carry forward, a legacy not just for our family, but for the world. Forever loving you both, David. When the lawyer finished reading, Laura and I were in tears. Even after all those years, David still amazed us with his vision, his generosity, and his unshakable faith in what we could do. Richard went on to show us the documents. David had set aside a substantial fund to maintain the island and launch its projects, with detailed notes about how he envisioned the foundation working. A few weeks later, Laura and I set foot on the island for the first time. It was exactly as David had described, an untouched paradise with white sand beaches, dense forest, and a thriving ecosystem. The island stretched about 20 hectares with a small building at the center, enough to serve as a base for researchers and visitors. Walking the trails, I felt David's presence beside me again, pointing out the island's potential, sharing his vision for the future. "It's unbelievable," Laura said as we rested in a small cove. "How could Dad keep this secret so long, and how did he know it was exactly what we needed now?" I answered, recalling my husband's calm wisdom. "Your father always looked ahead. He saw potential where others only saw problems, hope where others only saw darkness." In the months that followed, we began work on the Island of Hope project. Biologists, environmental educators, and architects specializing in sustainable design joined us. The idea was to build minimal infrastructure to welcome student groups and seniors while preserving as much of nature as possible. Laura took the lead with a passion that surprised me every day. Even with her intense medical residency, she made time for meetings, trips to the island, and planning sessions. One evening, as we spread designs out on the kitchen table, I blurted, "I don't know where you get all this energy." Laura smiled. That genuine smile I had seen return to her face in recent years. "From purpose, Mom. When you're doing something that truly matters, the energy just comes." One afternoon, while overseeing the installation of solar panels, Laura said something that left me speechless. "I'm grateful for everything that happened, the theft, the betrayal. If I hadn't made my worst mistake, I never would have found my path." I looked at her, startled by her depth. "You really have changed. Thanks to me not giving up on you when I had every reason to, and thanks to your father, who seemed to foresee everything." She gazed out at the horizon. "Sometimes I think Dad didn't just foresee it, he created the conditions for it to happen. He knew leaving you that letter would start a chain of events leading us here." I nodded. That was David, planting seeds quietly, waiting years for them to bloom. No matter what, I knew he would be proud, especially of his daughter. The Island of Hope Foundation was inaugurated on the 5th anniversary of David Haven. We held a simple ceremony with local officials, volunteers, the elderly, and children from the program. That day, Laura gave a speech I will never forget. She began with a steady voice, though her eyes glistened with tears. 5 years ago, I was a completely different person. I lived to hoard, to show off, to chase a twisted definition of success. I even stole from my own mother, selling family heirlooms just to buy a luxury trip. The crowd fell silent. She went on. "I didn't know then that losing everything was the only way to find what is truly priceless, a purpose, a mission, a bay, a new understanding of what really matters. My mother could have abandoned me the way I abandoned her, let me face the consequences alone. But she chose the harder path, teaching with tough love, guiding me to redemption through work and responsibility. And my father, though not here, still led us with vision, generosity, and unwavering faith in human potential." She lifted her hand, gesturing around the island. "This place isn't just an ecological sanctuary, it's a symbol of second chances. Here, the elderly will find new meaning, children will learn to protect nature, and scientists will discover solutions to environmental challenges. More than that, this island proves the power of transformation within each of us." When she finished, no one could hold back tears. "Mr. Jenkins took my hand and whispered, 'Your daughter has the light of God in her eyes. a light that only shines after walking through deep darkness. In the years that followed, that light only grew brighter. Laura completed her medical residency, split her time between caring for struggling seniors and managing the foundation. The Island of Hope became a national model, blending environmental education and therapy for the elderly. On one visit to the island, I found Laura sitting on a rock, watching children learn about sea turtle conservation with a biologist. I asked, "Is something wrong?" She shook her head. "No, I'm just thinking about the journey. Do you know what strikes me the most? Not the changes here, not even my own changes, but realizing that one single decision can change everything." "What decision?" I asked. She looked at me. "Yours, Mom. When you discovered what I had done, you could have used Dad's money to take everything back and left me to my fate. That would have been justice. But you chose the harder road." I smiled. "The road your father would have chosen." She nodded. "Yes, and now look where we are." She pointed at the scene. Children learning, seniors strolling the trails. All of this exists because you didn't give up on me. I pulled her into my arms, feeling the weight of her words. How many times had I wondered what would have happened if I had chosen revenge, if I had used David's power to punish her? I would have lost her forever, turned bitter. David Haven would not exist. The Island of Hope would remain only a dream. Sometimes forgiveness isn't just a gift we give to others, it's a gift we give ourselves, I whispered. That evening, sitting on the balcony of the small eco-house on the island, I took out David's old watch. It still ticked as steadily as it had on his wrist. "Thank you," I whispered into the starry sky, "for your wisdom, for your vision, for the love that still guides us." A gentle ocean breeze brushed my face, as if in answer. I knew he was watching, the growth of David Haven, the transformation of Laura, the birth of the Island of Hope. At 78, I had learned that life rarely follows the plan, that sometimes you must lose something precious to find something priceless, that pain, faced with courage and wisdom, can become purpose, and that true love is not just a feeling, but a daily decision to believe in someone's potential even when all evidence suggests otherwise. 10 years have passed since that fateful message. 10 years of changes, challenges, and accomplishments I never imagined at 68. Now, at 78, I look back at the legacy we built, filled with gratitude and wonder. From one painful betrayal, we created a network of projects touching hundreds of lives. Laura, now a geriatric specialist, conducts groundbreaking research on nature therapy for Alzheimer's patients, with outstanding results proving its ability to slow the disease's progress. She invited me to Geneva to join her at an international conference, where she presented our story to the world, highlighting that it was possible only because of my forgiveness and David's vision. Even Mark appeared unexpectedly to apologize in person after years of change in Portugal. I forgave him not for his sake, but for mine, because resentment is too heavy a burden in old age. Walking along the beach, watching David Haven alive with children playing with seniors, researchers teaching, and volunteers serving, I thought back to that old message. I held David's watch, the one we nearly lost, and understood. What I learned through this journey is that the greatest legacy we leave our children is not money or property, but values, the way we live, the love and trust we plant in their hearts. Every family has cracks, but if we let the light in through them, we will find hope. And what about you? What do you think is the most important thing parents can pass on to their children? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because every story, every experience can become a lesson for us all. And if you'd like to keep walking this path with me, listening, sharing, and learning from these moving stories, make sure to stay connected so you won't miss the next one. Because who knows, in these stories you might just find a piece of yourself.